Mike Williams was a 31-year-old real estate appraiser from Tallahassee, Florida, who disappeared on December 16, 2000, after leaving his home early in the morning to go duck hunting alone on Lake Seminole, a large reservoir along the Georgia-Florida border. His wife, Denise Williams, said he planned to be back by noon so they could celebrate their 6th wedding anniversary later that evening. When he failed to return, concerns were raised and an initial search was started. Law enforcement agencies, including the Jackson County Sheriff's Office and Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission, conducted extensive search efforts around Lake Seminole following his disappearance. Mike's truck and trailer were quickly located, and the search expanded into the water and surrounding areas. Despite the search effort, no sign of Mike was found during this time. Early theories about his disappearance leaned toward accident. Authorities initially considered that Williams might have fallen from his boat and drowned, and local speculation included the possibility that alligators in the area had consumed his body. Friends and searchers noted that Lake Seminole was home to large alligators, and this theory gained some traction among those following the case. 6 months after he vanished, some of Mike's personal items were found in the lake area. A local fisherman discovered a pair of waders, and 2 days later, Mike's hunting jacket, hunting license, and a flashlight were recovered from the water. These items were found together in a small area of the lake, but investigators noted there were no obvious signs of bite marks or other evidence linking the items to an alligator attack. Despite these discoveries, his body remained missing, and in the summer of 2001, Mike was declared legally dead at the request of his widow, Denise Williams. The disappearance of Mike Williams drew ongoing public interest, in part because some involved in the case questioned the accident theory. Mike's mother, Cheryl Williams, publicly expressed doubt that her son had died in an accidental drowning or by alligator attack. Wildlife experts later told investigators that alligators are less active during the winter months, leading some to question the plausibility of that theory. Cheryl Williams continued to advocate for further investigation and pressed authorities for new leads over the years following her son's disappearance. While the case remained officially classified by some as a disappearance or accidental death for many years, law enforcement reopened and revisited aspects of the investigation. In 2004, the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, or FDLE, took over the case and began to treat it as a potential homicide. Over time, investigators logged thousands of hours into the file, including reviewing physical evidence, interviewing witnesses, and following up on tips. During the mid-2000s, it became known that Mike's wife, Denise Williams, was the beneficiary of multiple life insurance policies on her husband's life. These policies were worth more than $1 million, having been taken out in the period leading up to Mike's disappearance. The fact that Denise was set to receive a significant payout and that these policies had been sold by the couple's longtime friend and insurance agent, Brian Winchester, drew additional scrutiny from investigators. In 2005, several years after Mike's disappearance, Denise Williams married Brian Winchester, the friend who had sold the life insurance policies. Denise and Brian continued to live in Mike's house for a period, and their relationship became a focus of speculation and investigation. Although there were unanswered questions about their roles and involvement in Mike's absence, no arrests were made in the years immediately following the disappearance. For over a decade, the case remained unsolved. Local media and law enforcement maintained that the matter was open, but with limited forensic evidence and a lack of any confirmed sightings or direct proof of foul play, the file remained cold. In 2016, new developments arose when Brian Winchester was arrested and charged with kidnapping Denise Williams at gunpoint amid tensions in their relationship. He was later sentenced to 20 years in prison for that offense. The kidnapping case led to renewed interest in Mike's disappearance. Investigators working on the cold case noted that the kidnapping arrest provided an opportunity to re-interview and re-evaluate individuals connected to the case. In the course of law enforcement interviews and cooperation agreements, Brian Winchester agreed to provide information about Mike's disappearance in exchange for assurances from prosecutors that they would not pursue murder charges against him for that crime. In October 2017, acting on information provided by Winchester, FDLE agents executed a search at an undisclosed location in northern Leon County, near Tallahassee. Following several days of searching, a body was recovered from a site near Dead-End Gardner Road that had been indicated by Winchester's statements to law enforcement. The remains were identified through DNA analysis, confirming a match with Mike's mother's DNA sample, and investigators confirmed that the remains were those of Mike Williams. The discovery marked the first time his body was recovered since his disappearance nearly 17 years earlier. The condition of the remains and the circumstances described by Winchester led investigators to determine that Mike's death was a homicide rather than an accidental drowning. State agents publicly stated that they now had evidence that Williams had been killed, and the focus of the case shifted from a missing person classification to a homicide investigation. The FDLE indicated that they had logged thousands of hours on the case over many years, and that the breakthrough in locating the body had provided a basis for developing leads and pursuing justice. Following the recovery of Mike's remains and the ensuing homicide classification, Denise Williams was arrested in May 2018 and charged with first-degree murder, conspiracy to commit first-degree murder, and being an accessory after the fact in connection with her husband's death. Prosecutors alleged that Denise and Brian Winchester conspired to kill Mike in order to benefit from the life insurance policies, and that Winchester shot Mike during the hunting trip. Prosecutors also charged her with taking steps to cover up the crime. During legal proceedings, evidence included testimony from Winchester, who provided detailed accounts to investigators of the events leading to Mike's death and burial. Prosecutors said Winchester admitted to shooting Mike and helped guide authorities to the body. Winchester's testimony was central to the prosecution's case against Denise. In December 2020, Denise Williams was convicted by a jury of first-degree murder and conspiracy charges related to her husband's killing. The conviction reflected the jury's determination that she played a role in orchestrating the homicide with Winchester, and that actions were taken to conceal the crime and profit from Mike's life insurance. Following her conviction, Denise was sentenced to life in prison. Winchester, who provided testimony against her, was granted immunity from murder charges in exchange for his cooperation and confession related to Mike's death. Winchester's existing sentence for the kidnapping charge remained in place. A later legal development, a Florida appellate court overturned Denise Williams' murder conviction on appeal, although her conspiracy conviction was upheld. She was resentenced to 30 years in prison based on that remaining conviction and related charges. Her sentence placed her in a state correctional facility where she continued to serve time for her role in the conspiracy to commit her husband's murder. The Mike Williams case remained a subject of public attention and media coverage, both because of the unusual early theories about alligators and accidental drowning, and due to the long period in which his disappearance remained unexplained. Documentaries and true crime series later explored the case, including aspects of the investigation, the role of family members in pushing for answers, and the eventual breakthrough that led to the recovery of his remains and the prosecution of those involved. Mike Williams was 31 years old at the time he went missing. Over nearly 17 years, his case evolved from a presumed hunting accident to a homicide investigation that resulted in criminal convictions tied to his death. The transition from missing person to solved cold case was shaped by persistent investigative work, cooperation from key individuals, and advances in law enforcement techniques that ultimately led to the discovery of his remains and legal accountability for his death.
Ronald Richard Penn was a 61-year-old man from the Central Coast region of New South Wales, Australia, who disappeared in October 1995. Prior to his disappearance, Penn was living in the Bateau Bay area of Wyong Shire and was involved in local community life. On October 12, 1995, he was last seen at a residence in Bateau Bay. After that date, Penn was not seen or heard from again by family, friends, or acquaintances. In the weeks following Penn's disappearance, his absence became a matter of concern. His personal effects were left behind, and he did not access his bank accounts or renew his driver's license after October 1995. These were considered unusual behaviors for a man of his age and circumstances. Law enforcement and family members regarded his ongoing silence and lack of activity as inconsistent with voluntary disappearance. Approximately 2 weeks after he was last seen, investigators located Penn's white Mazda van in bushland near Berkeley Vale's Central Coast. The vehicle was found burnt out, a significant development that suggested his disappearance involved foul play rather than a simple missing person case. There were no indications that Penn had intentionally set fire to his own van, and investigators treated the discovery of the burned vehicle as a potential crime scene. In response to the disappearance and the suspicious condition of the vehicle, the New South Wales Police Force established Strike Force Rankmore, a dedicated investigative team tasked with examining Penn's disappearance and suspected murder. The Strike Force undertook extensive searches of bushland, sandhills, and private properties across the Tuggerah Lakes area, utilizing land searches, specialist assistance, and cadaver dogs to locate evidence or human remains, but these searches initially did not yield positive results. Investigators also looked into circumstances surrounding Penn's last known activities. Police noted that Penn had been associated with a legal matter in the weeks prior to his disappearance. He was expected to give evidence in an apprehended violence order (AVO) hearing involving a woman at Wyong local court. This connection suggested to police that there could have been a motive linked to that legal matter, although no official public determination was made at that time regarding whether the matter was directly related to his disappearance. In November 1995, just over a month after Penn was last seen, an unrelated violent incident occurred at the Wyong local court when a 24-year-old woman was shot as she attended her AVO hearing. The woman survived the shooting but sustained serious injuries. Police arrested a 24-year-old man in relation to the shooting, charging him with attempted murder and firearms offenses. He was later acquitted on the basis of mental illness and not convicted for that incident. Police acknowledged that investigators were examining whether there could be a link between the shooting at the courthouse and Penn's disappearance, given that Penn was expected to be a witness in connection with that same domestic matter. Over the following years, the case remained open as a cold case investigation. Despite periodic reviews and public appeals for information, no confirmed sighting of Penn had been reported, and his body was never recovered. Police periodically revisited search areas based on new information and tips, including targeted searches with specialist units in potential burial sites, but these efforts did not uncover remains or definitive forensic evidence. In March 2015, nearly 2 decades after Ronald Penn's disappearance, law enforcement announced that a 51-year-old man had been charged with Penn's murder. The charge was brought after ongoing investigation by Strike Force Rankmore. The exact details released publicly about the evidence against the man were limited, but he was remanded in custody to appear before Gosford Local Court on both murder charges and matters related to the disappearance. At that time, a second man, aged 43, was also before the courts on charges of accessory after the fact to murder and related matters in connection with Penn's disappearance. Police preceding the formal charges expressed that the case had evolved from a missing person investigation to a suspected murder inquiry. The decision to lay murder charges reflected investigators' confidence that there was sufficient evidence to argue Penn had been killed and that his disappearance was not voluntary. Detectives sought to connect the 1995 disappearance to other contemporaneous events and alleged criminal activity in the region, including the attempted shooting at Wyong Court. In subsequent years following the charges, the man charged with Penn's murder appeared before local courts as the legal process unfolded. In May 2020, court reporting indicated that Graham Thomas Sales, identified in connection with the case, had admitted to killing Ronald Penn at the entrance on the Central Coast in October 1995. He also admitted to soliciting his brother, Ross Sales, to murder a woman known in court records as JF outside Wyong Local Court in November 1995. These admissions were part of broader legal proceedings involving multiple violent crimes. The admissions by Sales clarified aspects of the long-standing investigation, as according to the reporting on court outcomes, Sales's own statements acknowledged his role in Ronald Penn's death, although Penn's body has never been found. Despite the absence of Penn's remains, the combination of circumstantial evidence, investigative findings, and the admission of his killing formed the basis for pursuing prosecution. The Central Coast community and Penn's family remained focused on closure in the years after Penn disappeared. The ongoing legal actions and eventual admissions of responsibility marked a key shift in the case from being solely unsolved and unresolved to one with named individuals connected to fatal conduct. The Ronald Penn case spans over 20 years of investigative activity. It began with a missing person report following his last known sighting in October 1995 and evolved into a homicide investigation following the discovery of his burned-out vehicle and the absence of any confirmed contact or activity by Penn. Investigators established Strike Force Rankmore to examine the case, conducted extensive searches of land and properties, and periodically revisited it with new information and leads. The case also intersected with other violent incidents in the region from the same period, including the attempted shooting at Wyong Court, which police investigated for potential links to Penn's disappearance. Decades later, the legal proceedings against individuals connected to the case and subsequent admissions have provided factual grounding for asserting that Penn was murdered, although some elements, such as the location of his remains, remain unresolved. Authorities and family members continue to regard the matter as significant in the context of missing person and cold case investigations in New South Wales. The Ronald Penn case underscores the long-term nature of cold case inquiries and the importance of sustained investigative efforts even when there is limited evidence or prolonged absence of contact with missing individuals. Investigative teams like Strike Force Rankmore show how law enforcement agencies can maintain focus on unresolved disappearances and pursue leads for many years, culminating in formal charges and admissions that alter the legal and factual understanding of the case. Ronald Richard Penn was 61 years old when he was last seen in October 1995. He has not been located since, and his disappearance is treated as a homicide in the Australian legal system based on long-term investigation and subsequent charges against individuals implicated in connection with his death.